somebody who people want to be around is always showing interest in them, always asking them questions, never talking about yourself, and monitor to see how frequently you do it. And then and realtors do this all the damn time. It's really it's a chronic problem. Well, I should say inexperienced, unpolished, agents will be the ones that talk about themselves all the time. And they actually think that people are choosing to do business with them because of them more than, say, for example, the services that they'll provide. And that's another confusing thing, especially for those of you who believe branding is something, right? The brand has to be me, my lifestyle, me, 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 me. It's a bunch of ego crap. And the reality of it is brand. I'll tell you guys a story, and I wrote this down. I was meaning to share this with you yesterday. So Julie and I have been in the business since the early 90s, right? In our first year in business, we sold 100 houses. And by the time we were in our mid-20s, we were made into Howard Britton stars, right? So at a Howard Britton conference, and back in the day, being invited to a Howard Britton conference, let alone being a Howard Britton star, was pretty much the peak of fame in the real estate industry, just to kind of use modern words, right? So we were at a Howard Britton event, and you guys, especially those of you who are new, don't realize that there are no new ideas nowadays. They're all basically iterations of what was created way back in the 80s and the 90s. The branding, the teams, the marketing, the logos, the other thing. All that stuff basically was an idea that came and went, and it comes back every time there's, guess what? A lot of money in real estate. So whenever there's cash flowing in real estate, you see agents being tricked into spending money on things that are silly. So I remember being at this Howard Britton conference, and there was this guy that would show up occasionally. His name was Jim Duvall, and Jim's wife was Marianne Duvall. Marianne was a Howard Britton star, but Jim was an incredibly successful businessman. He owned all kinds of things, including part of the Florida Marlins. He since passed away, but he, just a fascinating guy. I remember being at this table at the back of this big conference. Howard would put all these tables up at the back of this conference hall, and Howard would have 2,000 to 3,000 attendees that would show up, and there maybe be 50 or 60 of us stars. So the attendees and the stars were all supposed to put up all their marketing stuff, propaganda, all that stuff in the back. And so you saw agents that were spending tons and tons of money on fancy brochures, business cards, videos, pictures of them with their moving trucks and their dogs, and some of them had hot air balloons. They were just spending extraordinary amounts of money because they had been suckered into believing they had to create a brand, right? They believed that if they had this brand, people would call them. That was the great myth. It's still the great myth nowadays. And I remember being at that back table, and Jim Duvall walked past, and I was standing there looking at some of the junk, and there were a whole bunch of other agents that were like, oh my gosh, look how cool that is, and they're all sort of like, wanting to copy what these Howard Britton stars were doing, with just thinking if a Howard Britton star was doing it, it must actually work. And Jim Duvall goes, you know what? You can always tell when the market's hot because agents spend their money on dumb stuff. He just said that and he walked away. In other words, what he said was, in essence, when agents are starting to make a lot of money, they have a tendency to be easy targets for people that are trying to sell them gimmicks. And that's exactly what's happening now. That's what's happening, and a lot of the branding stuff that would have been popular in the 90s has been replaced with a lot of the social networking stuff. And I'm going to tell you guys another story, and this actually happened last week. Again, something else I was remiss in telling you, and I apologize. I had an agent reach out to me directly, and he was asking questions about our coaching program or whatever, but he also asked a couple questions. Now, sometimes I just respond in text, and I just forward him those types of things